Hello, welcome back to my channel. And if you're new, I'm Anna, and here we're talking about books. So today I would like to talk to you about all the books that I read in January. I had an amazing reading month. I actually discovered a few very, very good books, and I would like to share what I thought about them. Please let me know if you found the new favorites and if you can recommend some of the books to me as well. But anyway, the first book that I read during January was The Sword of Kaigen by Emma Wang. I was very excited about this particular book. If you are a fantasy reader, you probably already heard about this one because it's a booktube darling, everyone is talking about it. So I had very high expectations, and to be honest, I wasn't disappointed. So the book is set in the Sword of Kaigen. It is a region in the Kaiganese Empire that borders another government, and there is lots of geopolitical tension in that particular region. And we follow a family. Particularly, we have pretty much two POVs, Misaki, a mother, and Mamoru, her eldest son. It is an Asian-inspired fantasy, and the Kaiganese Empire provides a very interesting backdrop for the story, because the law and the history of the country are not necessarily true. And some of the people in the story will have to grapple with this idea that everything they heard and everything to learn about their country is not necessarily true. And it's especially heartbreaking and dangerous in a situation when a country is facing a potential invasion from their neighbor. So Mamoru, Misaki's eldest son, actually will have to deal with the situation because he grew up in this empire, and he was taught all these legends and the history about the country, and he just slowly realizes that it's not necessarily true. And Misaki has to deal with her personal issues because she's hiding a very violent past. Because when she was a student, she used to study in academy in a different country, and she was fighting local criminal bosses. And obviously, she has a very difficult time reconciling this violent past with her very secluded and calm present. At the same time, there is lots of tension in the family because Misaki's relationship with her husband are not necessarily the best, because it was an arranged marriage and the relationship is quite strained. I found that there are two themes in these books, actually about the government and about all the propaganda that the government is feeding people. And another theme is actually interpersonal relationship and personal growth that people have to go through, because all of the characters that we're following, that we meet during the story, have to reconcile with certain issues, personal issues, and they have to accept it in a certain way and grow out of it and become better people. I personally found the personal line of the story the most interesting for me personally, just because I feel that the theme of the government and all the propaganda wasn't really explored on a deep enough level for me, but I think it's very difficult to achieve in a standalone book personally. I felt there is a sort of a chance that there could be a continuation of the story. I heard some word that Emma Wang was dealing with depression while she was actually writing The Sword of Kaigen, and she commented that she's not very, let's say, excited to go back to the story and to continue, just because she doesn't want to relive the same sort of experiences. So I don't think we can actually hope for the continuation of the story. But as a standalone, it's absolutely amazing. I loved it, and I would highly recommend it. Okay, the next book that I read during the month, it was Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn. You probably know about this book. There was a very famous movie. I actually watched it a few years back. But if you are not aware of the story, this is a domestic thriller, and we are following a family, Nick and Amy. They're seemingly happily married, but on the 5th year of anniversary of their wedding, Amy disappears, and the disappearance scene in their home tells about potentially very violent situation, about a struggle. And Nick and everyone around the situation are trying to understand what actually happened with Emmy. Because she was a country darling, she was an inspiration for a series of very famous books, Amazing Emmy. And lots of women grew up on these books, and obviously it's a media sensation that Emmy actually disappeared, and everyone is very, very interested to find the perpetrator, what actually happened with the Emmy. This book is split in two types of chapters. We're following Nick and Emmy in different chapters, and we are learning the story, what actually happened. I have a very unpopular opinion about this story. Probably it's a very, very mild spoiler. If you don't want to listen to the spoiler, maybe move to the next point and the timestamp down below. But I think, and it's a very unpopular opinion, I think Nick didn't deserve it. Because I heard this opinion from many people that Nick sort of deserved what happened to him based on his behavior. Both of them are very unpleasant people, but I definitely don't think that Nick deserved what was actually happening to him. But yes, it's a very unpopular opinion. Next book on the list in January, I read Stay True by Hua Su. It was part of my reading log. Actually, both the Sword of Kaigen and Stay True were part of my reading log. I will link it to this video, or maybe I'll just put a link under the video. If you're interested in my extensive rambling about these books, you can actually check it out there, because I share my thoughts on a deeper level, let's say. But Stay True is a memoir, and it's a Pulitzer Prize winner in memoir category. That's why I was very, very actually excited to pick it up. But unfortunately, it was a huge disappointment for me. And to be honest, it was a struggle to even finish this book. I'll try to explain why. I was absolutely in love with an idea of this book because Hua Su wrote this book about his friend and about the loss of his friend. It is about Ken. He's a student days friend. Unfortunately, didn't really have much time together because Ken was killed 3 years after they met each other. And I was really interested actually in exploring this friendship and how the loss of a friend affected the author, and how he managed to deal with the grief. But in my opinion, the book was mostly focused on the author himself. I personally didn't feel that I actually knew Ken after reading this book. I didn't feel this friendship. There is some information about what they were doing, that they had some projects together, they were meeting regularly, and they were having discussions of certain things, but I didn't feel that this friendship was real. And I'm not saying that it wasn't, but I think the author failed to actually convey emotional side of the relationship in this book. I had exactly the same complaint about his relationship with his parents when he was describing it in the beginning of the book. And it was a very big disappointment for me, to be honest, because I was really, really excited about it, but I didn't feel it. And yes, unfortunately, it was actually probably the worst book of this month. Not considering two other books that I DNF'd. And the next book was a horror Hex by Thomas Alder-Hewell. I apologize if I mispronounce the name. I'm not really great at pronouncing names. But anyway, this book is set in a Black Spring. It is a small town in the US, and this town is cursed. They have a local resident witch. This witch was killed a long time ago, but her spirit physically manifests in this town on daily basis. So people can see this witch appearing in different parts of the city on daily basis. And there is an organization in the city named Hex that is monitoring movements of the witch, because they're trying to keep the knowledge of her existence from the rest of the population, from the rest of the people around them. There is a reason for the secrecy, and it's actually explained pretty much in the beginning of the book when you people arrive to the town and they get basically all the information about what's happening. I think the data dump was incorporated in a very seamless way. I didn't feel it forced. I was actually very curious to learn more about the witch, about all the history surrounding this situation, and how it's all being wrapped up. But I think it will be a very interesting story for people who like Stephen King stories, Stephen King books. There is actually a blurb by Stephen King on the cover of this book, at least in my edition, but I do understand why, because at least how I felt that the main sort of theme in Stephen King stories is that the main horror is actually humanity rather than some supernatural phenomenon. And this is the theme in this book. So if you would like to explore how humans are dealing with certain situations and how certain horrors and certain situations bring out the worst in the humanity, you can check it out. I think it would be quite an interesting story for you. And the next book that I read in January is actually another horror, and I was very, very excited about this one because it is Witchcraft for Wayward Girls by Grady Hendrix. I read 4 books by Grady Hendrix so far, and I loved all of them. The way he writes characters is actually amazing. I was actually thinking about it because all of the books by him that I've read so far were from the point of view of women. I am literally very, very curious who is consulting with to write such good female characters, because I think it's a very rare case when an author can write a very believable character of opposite gender. One of these amazing examples, again, is Stephen King. I think his character work is amazing, regardless of who he's writing about. This is a child, man, woman, different ages. I think his character work is absolutely impeccable. And I feel Grady Hendrix is doing an amazing job writing female characters as well. But anyway, this book is set in a house. It is a sort of institution, a building, where wayward girls are sent. Wayward girls are pregnant teenagers that are not married and they brought shame to their family. This book is set in 70s in the US, and it is considered very shameful to be pregnant teenager at the time. And girls' parents, girls' friends, and their schools pretty much turning their backs on them. And girls are being sent to this house for the duration of their pregnancy, so their families can hide them and hide their shame. And girls can give birth to their babies there and give them up for their adoption. And to be honest, this book made me very angry because girls had to deal with so much shame. Everyone is turning their backs on them. These girls don't have any voice, any rights. Everything is decided for them. They are pretty much like rag dolls, and they can't control anything about their lives. They can't even keep the babies if they want to. I found the situation very, very disturbing and very upsetting for me personally. And I think this is the main emotional underlining of the story for me. If you are interested in this sort of stories, I would highly recommend this book. It was very, very good. At some point, girls find a book of witchcraft, and they're trying to solve some of the issues with spells and become witches. I don't want to really spoil much around the situation because that's pretty much what's happening in the book. But them trying to dabble in witchcraft for me is a manifestation of them trying to take power back, to actually try to control something about their lives, because their circumstances are very sad, and for some of them actually horrific, because not all of these pregnancies happened because they wanted them. If you want to know more about the story, I would really, really, really recommend it. It was an amazing experience. But please be prepared that probably you'll be very upset for reading this book. And the next one on my list is Following the Moon by James Norbury. I was considering reading his books for a really long time, but I was always stopping myself just because I felt that they're quite expensive for what you actually get, just because it's pretty much picture books. But if you have children of age, I would say 6 and upwards, I would highly recommend it because these books are very heartwarming and they are structured like a fable. For instance, in this book, Following the Moon, we follow a young pup that lost her parents and she's trying to find her parents and meets a wolf guardian and they're traveling trying to find pup's parents. I don't really want to say much more about this book because there's pretty much no much to say just because there is no much of a story. But it is a fable, and there are lots of very quotable sentences. If you want to discuss with your children certain life lessons, I would highly recommend this book. It was wonderful. It was very lighthearted, but at the same time, a bit sad at times. It was just beautiful, and the illustrations are absolutely magnificent as well. I highly recommend it. And the last book that I managed actually to finish during this month is The Last Devil to Die by Richard Osman. This is the fourth book in the First the Murder Club mystery series. I read all of them and I really, really enjoy the series. It was just me coming back to my one of my favorite characters and really, really enjoying the story. But in this series, we're following a group of 4 pensioners that live in the care home next to Tunbridge Wells in England, and they're solving murders. I would say the first book was still pretty much grounded, but after that, second, third, and fourth books are getting a little bit unhinged because we are literally dealing with some international crimes and spies and all these sort of things. If you like cozy murder mysteries with a big heart, I would highly recommend it. The main selling point of the series for me personally that we are following elderly people. And I think it is a very rare occurrence nowadays just because majority of the characters we follow in different books are quite young. But I absolutely treasure this time with this book just because it's not only the fact that we are following older people, but this book highlights all their joys and fears and different challenges that we may encounter at certain age. I found it very, very beautiful. There is lots of humor, but at the same time, there are lots of sad and profound moments as well. Because, for instance, this month when I was reading this book, it made me laugh, it made me cry, I had all spectrum of emotions, and I would really, really recommend that if you are in the mood for some cozy detective stories, but at the same time with older people and focused mostly on the characters, I would say, rather than the mystery story. I'm not saying that the mystery actually is bad. I think there are lots of very good twists and turns. It's very, very exciting, even though it's getting a little bit unhinged at some point. But I think the gem of the story is actually a relationship between these people. It's absolutely beautiful, and I hope you'll fall in love with them as well. And the last thing I would like to say, my best books, my favorite book of the month. I know it's very, very biased, and probably it's recency and just me being emotionally attached to the series. But I think the book that I enjoyed the most during this month was The Last Devil to Die by Richard Osman. It was just a very cozy feeling, and I was so happy to go back to these characters because I read 3 previous books uh, last year, and I was really happy to actually go back to this bunch of characters and learn what's happening with them. Please let me know what you're reading in January. If you could recommend me something interesting, or please let me know if you read some of these books that I was talking about today and what you thought about it. Even if your opinion is very different from mine, I would like to discuss it. See you soon. Bye.